You know what hurts the most? Not being poor. It's being treated like you are. My children looked at me like I was a burden. They thought I was some helpless old lady with nothing left in her name. But they had no idea. The truth about my bank account would one day make them question everything they thought they knew about me. I never cared much for money. At least that's what everyone thought. I wore the same old cardigan, cooked my meals from scratch, and still used the same phone I bought 10 years ago. To them, I was just Grandma who lives in that small house at the end of the street. But what they didn't know was that behind those dusty curtains, I was keeping a secret bigger than they could ever imagine. It started a few years after my husband passed away. We'd been together for almost 50 years. Through everything. We weren't rich, not back then, but we worked hard. He used to tell me, "Mary, always keep something for yourself. People change, but savings don't." So I did. When he died, the house got quieter. The kids visited less. At first, they came around to check on me. Then slowly, their visits turned into questions. "Mom, are you sure you don't want to sell the house? It's too big for you. Grandma, do you even need 2 bedrooms? We could help you move into a nice apartment." But the tone was never concern. It was calculation. They assumed I had nothing left, that the house was the only thing I owned. They'd whisper when they thought I wasn't listening. "Huh, she's probably broke. You know how Dad handled all the finances." "Yeah, once she's gone, we'll just sell the place. Split it, right?" Each word cut deeper than the last. It wasn't about the money anymore. It was about respect. They had decided who I was without ever asking. I lived quietly after that. Knitting, gardening, feeding the birds. Every day looked the same to them. But behind that calm routine, I had plans. You see, years ago, my husband and I had invested in a small property, an old bakery downtown. It didn't look like much back then, but that street, it grew fast. By the time I was a widow, that little bakery was worth more than I could have dreamed of. And every month rent came in, quietly, consistently. I didn't spend it. I didn't brag. I just watched it grow. Interest, savings, investments, all under my name. Meanwhile, my family kept treating me like I was barely surviving. My son Michael stopped calling unless he needed something. My daughter-in-law, Sandra, only came around when she needed help with the kids. Even my sweet granddaughter Lily started avoiding me after her mother said, "Grandma can't help you with college, honey. She barely has enough for her medicine." I smiled through it all, let them believe what they wanted. Until one day I overheard something that made me realize I had to teach them a lesson. It was my birthday. I made tea, baked a cake, and waited. But no one came. Hours passed, candles melted, and I sat there in silence, pretending it didn't matter. Then I heard my phone buzz. A message from my son. "Sorry, Mom. We're busy today. Maybe next week?" Then another message from Sandra in the family group chat, accidentally sent to me. "Why bother? She's old and broke. She won't even remember next year." That was the night I decided enough was enough. The next morning I called my lawyer, a kind man named Peter who'd handled my husband's estate years ago. He chuckled when I told him what I wanted. "Mrs. Hayes, are you sure about this?" I said, "Peter, I've never been more sure in my life." We worked quietly, over weeks, rearranging accounts, finalizing property papers, updating my will. I asked him for one thing, to make it look like I was broke. On paper, my balance would show a few $100s, just enough for basic needs. Everything else would be moved, safely, to a private trust under my control. When everything was ready, I waited. Sure enough, my son came around one weekend. He looked uncomfortable, standing in the kitchen like a stranger. "Mom, about the house," he started. "I really think you should sell it. You could move into assisted living. We'll handle everything." I looked at him, my own son, and I smiled. "All right, dear," I said. "Do what you think is best." His face lit up. He thought he'd won. But what he didn't know was that the deed to that house wasn't even in my name anymore. I had already transferred it to a local women's shelter I supported quietly for years. Every room in that house would soon shelter women who had nowhere to go. And my family? They would soon learn just how poor I really was. A few weeks later, the truth came out, all at once. I had called the family together for dinner. It was the first time in years we were all in the same room. I told them I had some news to share. The air was thick with tension. They expected me to announce something tragic. Maybe my health, maybe debts. Michael even looked impatient, like he couldn't wait to get back home. I started softly. I know you've all been worried about me. You think I don't have much left. And you're right, I don't. I don't have patience for disrespect anymore. They laughed awkwardly. Then I handed Michael an envelope. Inside was a single document, the donation deed. He read it, his hands shaking. You gave the house away? He stammered. To strangers? I nodded. To women who need a home more than I do. Sandra's face turned red. But what about us? What are we supposed to do when you're gone? I looked her dead in the eye. Oh, don't worry. You'll get something too. Just not what you expect. Then I handed my lawyer a folder. He stood, cleared his throat, and said, As per Mrs. Hayes' request, I'm authorized to share her financial summary. He opened the papers and began reading. Rental properties, investments, stocks, a trust fund valued in the millions. The room went silent. My son's jaw dropped. Sandra looked pale. Lily, sweet Lily, just whispered, Grandma, you're rich? I smiled gently. No, dear, I'm comfortable. I was saving it for something meaningful. I looked around the table, their shocked faces, their guilt finally visible. You all thought I was poor because I didn't live like you, because I didn't show off. But I've been wealthy in ways you'll never understand, not just in money, in peace. Then I looked at Lily. But you, my dear, you're different. I reached into my bag and handed her a small envelope. Inside was a check, her full college tuition paid in advance. Tears filled her eyes. I know your heart, Lily. Don't become like them. That night, I saw something break inside my son. He didn't speak, didn't eat, just stared at the papers, realizing everything he'd lost. Not just the money, but my respect. A few weeks later, they tried to call. Apologies, messages, promises to visit. But I didn't answer. I wasn't angry anymore, just tired. For the first time in years, I felt light. I spent my mornings at the shelter helping the women settle in. We turned my old house into something beautiful. Bright walls, warm blankets, laughter echoing through rooms that were once cold. I sat by the window one evening, watching the sunset, and smiled. People chase wealth their whole lives just to feel powerful. But true power isn't in what you own. It's in choosing who you give it to. My family thought I was poor. But the truth, I was the richest one in the room. Not because of my bank account, but because I finally knew my worth. If you want to hear what happened when my family showed up at my door months later, watch the next story. 6 months after I gave away my house, they finally showed up at my door. Not with love, not with tears, but with lawyers. They thought they could take everything back. Until I showed them the one letter they didn't know existed. It's funny how people change when money's involved. Before I was invisible. Now I was suddenly family again. My phone buzzed every morning. My voicemail filled with, Mom, we just want to talk. And, Grandma, we miss you. But when I opened the door that morning and saw their faces, I knew it wasn't love. It was greed, dressed as guilt. It had been half a year since I gave my house to the women's shelter. Life was peaceful. I woke up early, helped in the garden, and spent my afternoons reading stories to the little ones who stayed there. Their laughter filled rooms that used to echo with silence. I'd finally found a purpose, but peace never lasts long when people can't let go of what they think they're owed. That morning, a black car pulled up in front of the shelter. Out stepped my son, Michael. The same son who once called me broke. Beside him, Sandra, with her arms crossed and eyes sharp as knives. And behind them, a man in a suit. "Mom," Michael said, forcing a smile. "We just want to talk." I could tell from his eyes it wasn't a visit. It was an ambush. They followed me inside. The house, my house, was now filled with the sound of children playing and women talking softly in the living room. Sandra looked disgusted. She whispered, "This place smells like soup." I ignored her. We sat at the kitchen table. Michael cleared his throat. "Mom, we've been talking. We think what you did wasn't fair." "Fair?" I repeated quietly. He continued, "You gave the house away. You didn't even tell us. You should have consulted the family before doing something that drastic." I looked at him. "The same family that forgot my birthday?" He looked down. Sandra stepped in. "We're just saying this place could have been sold for a good price. We could have managed it for you. Used the money wisely." I laughed softly. "Used it wisely? For another cruise, perhaps?" Sandra's face turned red. "Mom," Michael said, his voice rising. "We're serious. Our lawyer here says you might not have been in the right state of mind when you signed those papers." The lawyer straightened his tie. "It's possible to challenge the donation on grounds of diminished capacity." My hands trembled slightly. "Not from fear, but from anger. My mind was clear enough to raise you," I said. "Clear enough to bury your father, run a household, and survive alone for years. Don't tell me I wasn't clear when I decided to stop being your convenience." The lawyer cleared his throat. Uncomfortable. Michael sighed. "We just want what's fair." I stood up. "What's fair, Michael, is knowing your mother's still breathing, and not calling only when you want something." They stared at me, silent. And that's when Lily walked in. She had grown so much. Strong, confident, eyes filled with light. She'd been volunteering at the shelter since her college started. When she saw her parents, she froze. "Mom, Dad, what are you doing here?" Sandra forced a smile. "Just talking to Grandma about some paperwork." But Lily wasn't stupid. She turned to me and asked, "Are they trying to take your house?" I smiled sadly. "They're trying to take what isn't even mine anymore." Lily's eyes filled with tears. "Grandma, they can't. This place helps people. Everyone here loves you." Michael shifted uncomfortably. "Lily, stay out of this. You don't understand." She raised her voice. "No, Dad, I do understand. You never visited her. You never cared until money got involved." The room went quiet. Even the lawyer looked away. Sandra hissed, "Lily, lower your tone." But she didn't. She walked over to me, held my hand, and said, "You taught me that family isn't about blood. It's about how you treat people. And they've treated you terribly." My heart swelled with pride. For the first time, someone was standing with me, not against me. Michael looked embarrassed. "Fine," he said, "but we'll see what the law says." They turned and left. A few weeks later, I received a letter, a court summons. They had actually done it. My own family was suing me. At first, I cried, not because I was scared of losing, but because I couldn't believe how far they'd fallen. Then I stopped crying. I picked up the phone and called my lawyer, Peter. He laughed softly when I told him, "Don't worry, Mrs. Hayes. Remember that letter your husband left you years ago? The one you kept in the safety deposit box?" My heart skipped. "Yes," I said. "Why?" He replied, "You might want to bring it to court." The day came. The courtroom was packed. Mostly my family on one side, and a few women from the shelter on the other. Their presence gave me strength. Michael's lawyer started. He painted a picture of an elderly woman manipulated into giving away her estate. I almost laughed. When it was my turn, Peter stood up. "Your Honor," he said, "my client was not only of sound mind, she was executing a plan her late husband designed years ago." Everyone looked confused. Peter reached into his briefcase and pulled out an envelope. Aged yellow, sealed with wax. He handed it to the judge. Inside was my husband's letter. He had written, "If you are reading this, it means I am gone. Everything we built together, our savings, properties, investments, belong to Mary. She alone knows what to do with it. Our children are good, but money can make good people forget their values. If she chooses to give it all away, that's her right. It's her final say, not theirs." The courtroom was silent. Sandra's mouth fell open. Michael looked like he'd seen a ghost. The judge cleared his throat. "Well, it seems quite clear. Mrs. Hayes acted within her legal and moral rights. Case dismissed." Lily squeezed my hand, and for the first time I felt peace. Not quiet, fragile peace, but strong, victorious peace. After court, Michael didn't say a word to me. He just walked away, head low. Sandra avoided my eyes. But Lily... She hugged me so tight I thought my old bones might crack. "Grandma," she whispered, "I'm so proud of you." I smiled. "You know, dear, your grandfather used to say something. When people show you who they are around money, believe them." She nodded. "I will." Weeks passed, and slowly the messages from Michael stopped. At first, I thought I'd lost him for good, but one evening, I got a call. His voice shaky, quiet. "Mom," he said. "I'm sorry." There was a long silence. "I didn't realize how badly I treated you. I was angry. Not at you, at myself. I failed, and I blamed you. I didn't say anything." He continued. "I just wanted to feel in control of something. But you were right. Money changes people." I took a deep breath. "It doesn't have to, Michael. It can change people for better, too, if you learn from it." He sniffled softly. "Can I come see you?" I paused for a moment, then said, "Yes, but come alone." A few days later he did. No lawyer, no Sandra, just my son. He looked older, softer somehow. He helped me in the garden that morning, just like he used to when he was a boy. We didn't talk about the lawsuit. We didn't talk about the money. We just talked. When he left, he hugged me. Really hugged me. And for the first time in years, I believed he meant it. A year later, I attended Lily's graduation. She wore a bright yellow dress and held her diploma high. When she spotted me in the crowd, she ran over and hugged me. "Grandma, I did it." I laughed. "I know you did. Your heart did that long before your grades did." She grinned. "Guess what? I got a job offer from a charity organization. They help senior citizens who don't have families." Tears welled in my eyes. "That's perfect, sweetheart. That's where your heart belongs," she smiled. "You taught me that, Grandma. Money comes and goes, but kindness stays." That night, as I sat on my porch watching the stars, I thought about everything. The lies, the greed, the betrayal, and the forgiveness. Life had taken so much, but it had given me something far more valuable. Clarity. People think age makes you weak, but what they forget is, the older you get, the less you care about what others think, and the more you see what truly matters. I may have lost my house, but I gained a family worth keeping, not the one I raised, but the one I found along the way. If you want to hear what happened when my daughter-in-law tried one last trick to claim my inheritance, watch the next story. When you think you've seen someone's true colors, they somehow find a darker shade. Just when I thought the storm was over, my daughter-in-law made her final move. She didn't just want my house or my savings. She wanted my entire inheritance. But what she didn't know was that I'd been planning my last surprise all along. I used to think the hardest part of getting old was losing your memory or your health. But no. The hardest part is watching people you love forget their own hearts. After the court case ended and my son apologized, I thought we were finally healing. I even let him visit every Sunday again. He'd bring groceries, help me water the plants, and sometimes we'd just sit on the porch, talking about nothing and everything. But behind those quiet afternoons, Sandra, his wife, was planning something, and when her plan finally came out, it almost tore us apart for good. It started with small things. Sandra began calling me again. At first, it was awkward. Just polite hellos, shallow small talk. Then she started sending gifts. A box of tea, a new blanket, a framed photo of the family. She even wrote, "I hope we can start fresh, Mom." I wanted to believe her. I really did. So I gave her the benefit of the doubt. But something in her tone, something in the way she'd always end her calls with, "By the way, have you updated your will lately?" It made my stomach twist. I brushed it off at first. I told myself I was being paranoid, until one afternoon, Lily came running into my room holding her phone. "Grandma," she said, "you need to see this." It was a screenshot. A message her mother had accidentally sent to her instead of someone else. It read, "If I can convince her to move into assisted living, Michael will get everything once she's gone. I'll make sure she trusts me again first." My hands went cold. After everything that had happened, she still hadn't changed. The next Sunday, I pretended everything was normal. I made lunch for Michael and Sandra. Roasted chicken, his favorite. Sandra sat across from me, smiling too sweetly. "Mom, you shouldn't live here alone," she said, cutting into her food. "It's not safe," I smiled. "I've been living alone for 15 years, dear. I think I'll survive another day." She laughed nervously. "I just worry. What if you fall? You'd be better in one of those senior facilities. You'd get company, nurses, everything." Michael stayed quiet. I could tell he didn't like where the conversation was going. Sandra pressed on. "Besides, it'd be easier to handle your finances that way. Less stress for you. We could help manage things." There it was, the real reason. I wiped my hands with my napkin and said, "Do you know what your problem is, Sandra? You think kindness is a disguise? You wear it when you want something, then throw it away when you're done." Her smile vanished. "Excuse me?" I looked at my son. "Michael, did you know she was planning to put me in assisted living?" He frowned. "What? No." I slid the printed screenshot across the table. He picked it up. His eyes scanned the words, and his face went pale. "Sandra," he whispered. "What is this?" Her voice cracked. "Michael, it's not what it looks like." He slammed his fork down. "I believed you changed." She started crying. Fake tears. I'd seen enough of them to know the difference. "Mom," she said, turning to me. "I was just thinking about your safety. I swear I didn't mean..." I stood up. "You didn't mean to get caught, you mean?" She froze. I took a deep breath. "I forgave you once. But forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting. You think you're playing chess, dear. But I've been on this board a lot longer than you have. After they left, I knew what I had to do. Not out of anger, not out of revenge, but to protect what little peace I had left. I called my lawyer, Peter, again. He chuckled when he heard my voice. "Mrs. Hayes, what's she done this time?" "Let's just say," I told him, "I need to update my will. One last time. This time, I made it foolproof. I set up a trust fund, one that would only activate under one condition: that my son continued volunteering at the shelter every month for a full year. If he did, he'd inherit a generous amount, enough to live comfortably. But if he failed even once, everything would automatically go to charity. As for Sandra, she'd get nothing, not a single cent. But I didn't leave her out completely. I wrote her a letter, not of anger, but of truth." A few months passed. Michael started visiting the shelter every week, helping with repairs, serving food, reading to the children. At first, I thought he was just doing it for the inheritance, but slowly I saw something change in him. He smiled more. He laughed again. He'd sit with the women and listen to their stories. Stories of pain, survival, and hope. One afternoon, he looked at me and said, "Mom, I think I understand now. You gave this place away because it gave you something money never could. Peace." I smiled. "Yes, son. Money builds walls, but kindness builds homes." He nodded. And for the first time in years, I saw my husband in him again. Gentle, humble, kind. But Sandra couldn't stand it. She rarely visited anymore. Then one day she did, with a plan so cruel it could have undone everything. She came to the shelter pretending to help, smiling, carrying donation boxes. But while I was talking to one of the volunteers, she sneaked into my office. She didn't know I had a small camera there, one Lily had installed months ago after the lawsuit. Sandra rummaged through my drawers, opened my safe and took out a sealed envelope. My legal papers. I walked in right as she froze, envelope in hand. Her face went pale. "Mom, I was just looking for something that isn't yours," I said calmly. She stammered, I just wanted to check if—" I cut her off. "You wanted to see if you were still in my will." Her silence was all the answer I needed. I walked to my desk, pulled out the letter I'd written her months ago, and handed it to her. She hesitated, then opened it. Inside it read, "Sandra, I don't hate you. I pity you, because you've spent your whole life chasing money, and you still haven't realized. Love is the only currency that never runs out. I hope one day you find it, but until then this door is closed." Merry tears filled her eyes. "Real ones this time," she whispered. "I didn't mean to hurt anyone. I just wanted security." I nodded softly. "We all do. But you can't steal peace, Sandra. You have to earn it." She placed the envelope back into the safe, turned around and left. That was the last time I ever saw her. Months went by. Michael kept his promise. He volunteered at the shelter every week for a full year. Even when it rained, even when work was tough. He didn't know about the trust fund. He just did it because he wanted to. When the year ended, I called Peter again. "Activate it," I said. A week later, Michael received a letter, a check, along with a note from me. "You've proven that love doesn't need to be inherited. It grows on its own. Use this not to build wealth, but to build people." He called me that night, crying. "Mom, I don't deserve this." I said, "You didn't before, but now you've earned it. I'm old now. My hair is silver, my hands shaky, but my heart feels young again." I spend my mornings watching the children at the shelter play in the garden I once planted. Sometimes Lily visits with her husband, the kind man she met volunteering here. Michael comes too. He fixes the fence, carries boxes, laughs with the women. We sit on the porch, sipping tea as the sun sets, and every now and then I catch him looking at me with eyes full of quiet regret. Not for the money he lost, but for the time he wasted chasing it. He always says the same thing before leaving. "Mom, thank you for not giving up on me." And I always answer, "That's what mothers do, son. We never stop loving. We just stop waiting." Last week I got a letter in the mail from Sandra. She wrote, "Mary, I don't expect forgiveness, but I've started working at a local women's center. You were right. Peace can't be bought. I'm trying to find mine. Thank you for teaching me, even when I didn't deserve it." I smiled through tears. Maybe people really can change. Maybe my story wasn't about losing or winning, but about teaching, healing, forgiving. In the end, the richest thing I ever gave my family wasn't money. It was perspective. If you want to hear what happened after I read Sandra's final letter, watch the next story. When I saw the letter in my mailbox, my first thought was, not again. After all these years, I thought the past was done. But when I read her words, my heart broke in a way I didn't expect. Because sometimes, the person you once called your enemy can become the reason you finally heal. It's strange how life works. One moment, you're fighting battles that feel endless. And the next, you're holding a piece of paper that makes every scar worth it. Sandra's letter came on a quiet Tuesday morning. The mailman handed it to me like it was nothing special, just another envelope. But when I saw her handwriting, neat, small, careful, I froze. I hadn't heard from her in almost 2 years. After that day at the shelter, she disappeared from our lives completely. No calls, no visits, not even a text to Lily. And now, This. I took a deep breath, sat down by the window, and began to read. The first line hit me like a wave. Dear Mary, I don't expect forgiveness, but I hope this letter finds you with peace. I remember my hands trembling a little as I read. Sandra had always been strong, or at least pretended to be. But here her words sounded soft, fragile. She wrote about how she'd lost everything after the lawsuit. Her job, her friends, her reputation. Michael had moved out for a while and she'd gone back to living with her sister. At first, she said she blamed me for everything. She thought I'd ruined her life. But then she wrote this line, and I'll never forget it. One night, I was cleaning at a women's shelter for extra cash. A little girl dropped her toy, and I picked it up for her. She smiled and said, "Thank you, Grandma." I cried for the first time in years. That's when I realized I wasn't angry at you. I was angry at myself. I had to stop reading for a moment. The same woman who once tried to take my house was now cleaning shelters and being called Grandma by strangers. I could almost feel her pain through the ink. Over the next few pages, Sandra shared everything. She'd started working part-time at a women's center, helping young mothers who'd been abandoned. She said seeing them reminded her of the woman she used to be. Desperate, scared, trying to control everything so she wouldn't lose it all. I used to think money could make me feel safe, she wrote. But the truth is, I was never scared of being poor. I was scared of being powerless, and I took that fear out on everyone around me. She explained how Michael eventually visited her. He didn't yell. He didn't blame. He just sat there and listened. He told me you forgave me once, she wrote. And that you said forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting. I didn't understand that before, but now I do. Forgiveness means accepting someone's change, not their excuses, I smiled. It sounded like something I'd say. Maybe my words had finally reached her, even if it took years. Then came the part that truly broke me. I found out I can't have children anymore. The stress, the surgeries, it all took its toll. For months I felt like my life had no meaning. But one day a little boy at the shelter said, "Can you read me a story?" I did, and when he hugged me after, I realized maybe I was meant to be a mother in a different way. I put the letter down and wiped my tears. For the first time, I didn't see her as the villain anymore. I saw her as a woman who'd finally learned what I'd been trying to teach her all along. That wealth has nothing to do with money, and everything to do with what you give. The last page of her letter was sealed with a small photo. It was her, standing with 5 children, all smiling. On the back, she'd written, "These are my kids now. They call me Miss Sandra. I teach them how to cook, read, and write thank you letters, just like Lily taught me that day." I couldn't help but laugh softly through the tears. She'd come full circle. But the last paragraph, that one left me speechless. "Mary, I know I caused you pain. I stole your peace for years, but you gave me something I could never repay. The chance to start over. You didn't just protect your inheritance. You protected my soul. I've started a fund at the shelter in your name. It's small now, but I call it the Mary Hayes Second Chance Fund, for women like me, who just need someone to believe they can change." I dropped the letter. For a few minutes I couldn't even breathe. My name, on a fund she created, for women who'd lost their way. Just like she once did. It felt unreal. I thought back to every sleepless night, every tear I'd cried thinking I'd failed as a mother-in-law, every fight, every courtroom visit, every betrayal. And in that one moment, it all made sense. Every ounce of pain had turned into something beautiful. I called Michael that evening. He picked up right away. "Mom, everything okay?" I said, "You might want to come over. There's something you need to see." He arrived in 20 minutes, still wearing his work clothes. When I handed him the letter, he looked confused. "Sandra wrote to you?" "Just read it," I said. As he read, his eyes softened. He didn't say a word until the end. Then he whispered, "She's really changed, hasn't she?" I nodded. She found what she was looking for. Not money, not control. Meaning. He sat there quietly for a while. Then he said something I'll never forget. "Mom, I used to think you were being cruel when you gave everything to charity. But now I get it. You weren't taking something from us. You were giving us a lesson we couldn't buy." I smiled. Some lessons are worth more than gold. He looked down at the letter again. "Do you think I should reach out to her?" "Yes," I said softly. "She's finally learning. Don't let her do it alone." 2 weeks later, Michael and I went to visit Sandra's center. I wasn't sure what to expect, but when we arrived, I saw her through the window, sitting on the floor, helping a little girl tie her shoes. Her hair was tied back, no jewelry, no fancy clothes, just peace. When she looked up and saw us, her eyes filled with tears instantly. She stood up slowly, walked toward me, and said, "Mary," I held up my hand. "No apologies. You've already said everything in that letter." She nodded, still crying. Then she said, "I never thought you'd come." I smiled. Neither did I. We walked through the center together. Children ran around laughing. Women sat sewing clothes. And on the wall by the entrance, there it was, a small framed sign that read, "The Mary Hayes Second Chance Fund." My name. Not as a reminder of what I lost, but of what we all gained. Sandra turned to me. "Every woman who walks through that door gets a chance to rebuild her life, the same way you gave me mine." I touched her arm gently. "You gave it to yourself, dear. I just refused to let you destroy it." She smiled through tears. And for the first time in years, we hugged. Not as enemies, but as two women who finally understood each other. Months passed after that visit. Sandra and Michael began talking again. Slowly, carefully. They didn't rush anything. Healing doesn't happen overnight. But every time they visited the shelter, I saw them smile together. Not the fake smiles from before. The real ones. Lily even started helping out at Sandra's center on weekends. She said, "Grandma, it feels good to see everyone helping each other. It's like we're finally a family again." And she was right, because sometimes family isn't just blood. It's the people who choose to heal with you. Now every morning I walk past that little sign on the wall at the shelter, the Mary Hayes Second Chance Fund. I touch it gently and whisper, "This was never about me." Because it wasn't. It was about all the women who needed to believe that broken people can still build beautiful things. And as for Sandra, she visits often now. Brings the kids from the center to help in the garden. Sometimes we sit together drinking tea in silence. No blame, no guilt, just peace. Last week she looked at me and said, "You know, Mary, you were right all along. Love really is the only currency that never runs out." I smiled. "Now you finally understand wealth, dear." She laughed softly. And in that moment I realized forgiveness wasn't a gift I gave her. It was a gift I gave myself. Because when you let go of bitterness, you don't lose anything. You gain freedom. Life will test you with people who betray you, hurt you, use you. But if you respond with wisdom instead of revenge, you'll turn your pain into someone else's lesson. That's what this whole journey taught me. You don't need to be rich to leave a legacy. You just need to live with purpose. And maybe, just maybe, forgiveness is the real inheritance we leave behind. If you want to hear the hidden story behind the Second Chance Fund, watch the next video. They thought my story ended when I died. They buried me, cried a little, and went back to their lives. But a week later, when they opened that small wooden box I left behind, they found out I had one last secret. And it wasn't money. It was something far more powerful. Funny thing about getting old. You start thinking about endings before they happen. I always knew my time would come soon, so I spent my last few years making sure I'd leave behind something that actually mattered. No, not a house, not gold or jewelry, Not even that big bank account everyone used to whisper about. What I left behind was something that would change how they saw me, and themselves, forever. But before we get to that box, you need to know what happened in the months leading up to my last day. After Sandra and I made peace, life slowed down in the most beautiful way. Michael would visit on Sundays with Lily, and sometimes Sandra would come too, bringing fresh flowers from the shelter garden. For the first time in years, we were truly happy. But deep down, I knew my health was fading. The doctors didn't say it directly, but I could feel it in the little things. The way my hands trembled, the way I'd lose my breath climbing the stairs, and the quiet ache that never really went away. I didn't want to worry them, so I smiled through it all. I kept baking, teaching Lily new recipes, and helping at the shelter when I could. But at night, when the house got quiet, I started writing. Letters, notes, memories, all the things I'd never said out loud, not because I was afraid, but because I wanted them to truly see me, not as the old, stubborn woman they used to judge, but as the person behind the lessons I tried to teach. That's how the box began. It started as a small wooden chest, something my late husband had carved years ago. Inside, I placed envelopes labeled with each of their names. For Michael, for Sandra, for Lily, and one more. For anyone who needs to understand love. Each letter told a story, not just about me, but about us, in Michael's. I wrote about the little boy who used to save his allowance to buy me flowers, and how I wished he'd never let the world make him believe that love had to be expensive. In Sandra's, I wrote about forgiveness. I told her how proud I was of the woman she became, how the fund she built in my name meant more to me than any fortune I'd ever made. In Lily's, I wrote about legacy, how real inheritance isn't money, but the lessons we leave behind. And in that last letter, the one without a name, I wrote something that even surprised me, because that one wasn't for them. It was for anyone who ever felt unseen, unloved, or unworthy. It was for people like I once was, a woman who spent years giving everything and being misunderstood for it. A few weeks before I passed, I called Michael to the porch one evening. The sunset was painting the sky gold, and for some reason I just felt like it was time to say what needed to be said. Michael, I told him, promise me something. He smiled nervously. Mom, don't start with that. You're gonna live forever, I chuckled. No one lives forever, sweetheart, but the things we do, those can. He looked at me quietly, waiting. Promise me that when I'm gone, you won't look for what I left behind. You'll read what I left behind. He frowned a little. What do you mean? You'll know when the time comes. He nodded. He didn't understand it then, but he would soon. I passed away quietly in my sleep. No drama, no pain, just peace. When they came for the funeral, the house was filled with soft music and the smell of my favorite roses. They said it was beautiful, simple, just like I wanted. Afterward, Michael and Sandra stayed behind to sort through my things. That's when Lily found the box. It was sitting on the kitchen table, a note taped to the top. To my family, don't look for what's missing. Look for what's already here. Michael opened it slowly. The envelopes were stacked neatly inside. He read his first, then Sandra's, then Lily's. By the time they finished, the room was silent. No one said a word. Then Lily noticed something. A small envelope tucked beneath the others. It had no name, just 2 words written in shaky handwriting. The truth. Michael hesitated. Then he opened it. Inside was a single folded page and a flash drive. He unfolded the letter first. By now, you've all learned what I truly valued in life. But there's one last thing I never told you. The account everyone thought I used to hide money. The one you all argued about for years. It was real. But it wasn't for me. It was for all of you, Sandra gasped. Every month I put away a small portion of what I earned from my investments. and donated the rest anonymously to causes I believed in. Education, shelter homes, food programs, and women who needed help starting over. That account isn't empty. It's been funding hundreds of scholarships for girls in small towns, including one for a little girl named Maya. She's 12 now. You'll find her story on the flash drive. Michael plugged it into his laptop. A video started playing. On screen was a young girl sitting in a classroom, smiling shyly. She said, "I don't know who Mary Hayes is, but her fund gave me a chance to go to school. One day I want to be a teacher, so I can help others like she helped me." Sandra began to cry. Lily held her hand tightly, and then, at the end of the video, came one more clip. It was me, sitting in my chair holding a cup of tea, smiling at the camera. If you're watching this, it means I'm gone. But that's okay, because I didn't live to be remembered. I lived to make sure someone else got their chance to dream. So if you want to honor me, don't build statues, build people. After that day, everything changed. Michael stopped talking about inheritance. Sandra expanded the shelter program and renamed it the Mary and Maya Foundation. Lily began volunteering every weekend, helping kids learn how to read. And the craziest part, they never touched a single cent from the remaining funds. Instead, they grew it, turning my secret bank account into a national scholarship fund for underprivileged women. For the first time, my family worked together not out of guilt, but out of gratitude. A year after my passing, the foundation held its first public event. Hundreds of people showed up. Women whose lives had been changed, children who got their first chance at education, and volunteers from all over. On stage, Michael gave a short speech. He said, "For years we thought Mom's wealth was hidden in a bank account, but now we know. Her real wealth was in every life she touched. This foundation isn't just her legacy. It's our second chance to be the family she believed we could be." The crowd clapped. Sandra cried quietly in the front row, and Lily, standing tall and proud, whispered to her dad, "She's still here, isn't she?" He smiled. "Always. Sometimes the richest people leave behind the smallest houses, and sometimes the poorest-looking ones leave behind empires of kindness. My story wasn't about money. It was about meaning. They thought I was poor because I didn't show off, but I was never poor. I was just quietly rich in purpose. And maybe that's what I wanted them to see all along. Because one day, when they tell my story, I don't want them to say, 'She had money.' I want them to say, 'She changed lives.' Now when they visit the foundation, there's a mural at the entrance. It shows an old woman handing a book to a young girl. Underneath it says, 'True wealth is what you give, not what you keep.' And in small letters at the bottom, painted by Lily herself, are the words, 'For Grandma.' That's how my story lives on, not through possessions, but through people. Watch the next story. It'll show you what happened to Maya, the girl my fund helped. I thought my story ended when I died, but years later, a girl I never met found my name and changed everything. She didn't know who I was. She didn't know the story behind the money that saved her. But when she learned the truth, she made a promise that even I didn't see coming. It's been years since my passing. Time moves differently when you're gone. You don't count days anymore. You count hearts. And lately, there's been one heart that keeps pulling my attention. A girl named Maya. The same little girl from that video. The one who said she wanted to become a teacher. She's all grown up now. And what she's about to do will show you how a single act of kindness can outlive the person who started it. Maya grew up in a small town, miles away from where I lived. Her mother cleaned houses. Her father left when she was 10. Money was always tight. But she was bright, curious, always asking why. Her teachers loved her. But when it came time for high school, they told her she might have to drop out. Her mother simply couldn't afford it anymore. That was when she heard about a scholarship. One she didn't remember applying for. It came from a place she'd never heard of before. The Mary and Maya Foundation. She laughed when she saw the name. "Mom, look. They used my name." But her mom just stared at it quietly. "Maya," she whispered, "I think this is meant for you." And it was. That scholarship covered her full education. Books, uniforms, even the bus fare. She didn't know who Mary Hayes was. She just knew that someone out there believed she was worth helping. Years passed and Maya worked hard. She studied under candlelight. She helped her mom clean houses on weekends. And every night before bed, she'd whisper, "Thank you, whoever you are." When she graduated, the foundation sent her a letter. "Congratulations, Maya. We're proud of you. You've been chosen to speak at the annual foundation event in the city." She'd never even left her town before, but something inside her said, "Go." So she packed her small bag, put on her best dress, and took the bus to the city. When she arrived, she was shocked. The event was huge. People dressed in suits, reporters, cameras. And at the center of it all, a banner that said, "Celebrating 10 years of the Mary and Maya Foundation." Her eyes widened. "That's me," she thought. "That's my name." As she sat waiting for her turn to speak, she looked around and saw faces of other girls like her, smiling, laughing, hugging. Each one had been helped by the same fund. Then, on a large screen behind the stage, a video started playing. It was old, grainy, faded, but the voice was clear. "It was me. If you're watching this, it means this foundation has grown beyond me. I might not be here anymore, but I want you to know, every dollar that helped you came from a lesson learned in love." The room went silent. Maya froze in her seat. For the first time, she heard my name and my story. "My family thought I was poor," the video said. "But the truth is, I just spent my riches differently." Maya's eyes filled with tears. She had never met me, but somehow, it felt like she had. She turned to see Michael and Sandra standing near the front row, older now, smiling proudly. Lily was there too, helping run the event. Maya didn't know them personally, but she recognized them from photos. The people who carried on my legacy. That was the moment she made her promise. When it was her turn to speak, Maya walked up to the microphone, her hands shaking a little. She looked at the crowd, hundreds of people staring back, and took a deep breath. "My name is Maya," she began softly. "I'm here today because of a woman I never met. Her name was Mary Hayes. She changed my life, without ever knowing me." You could hear a pin drop. I used to think scholarships were just money. But now I know what their message is. Someone out there believed I was worth something, and that belief gave me the courage to dream. She paused, looked at Michael and Sandra, and continued. "I didn't know who Mary Hayes was before today, but hearing her story made me realize something. She didn't build a foundation to be remembered. She built it to keep giving. And that's what I want to do too." She held up a small envelope. "I've been saving part of my allowance and part of every job I've done. It's not much, but today I want to start something new. A fund called The Future Marys, for girls like me. Girls who just need someone to believe in them." The crowd erupted in applause. Sandra wiped her tears. Michael couldn't stop smiling. And Lily walked up to the stage, hugging Maya tightly. In that moment, my heart, wherever it was, felt the same warmth it did the day I wrote my first donation check. After the event, Lily took Maya aside. They walked through the garden behind the center, the same one Sandra and I used to tend. Lily said, "You know, my grandmother would have loved you." Maya smiled shyly. "I feel like I know her now." They sat on a bench and Lily handed her a small pendant. It was a simple silver locket with the initials M.H. "She wore this every day," Lily said. She said it reminded her to keep her heart open, no matter how hard life got. Maya opened it. Inside was a tiny picture. Me, younger, holding baby Michael. Her eyes filled again. "I'll take care of it," she whispered. "I know you will," Lily said. That night, Maya went home, placed the pendant on her bedside table, and wrote in her diary, "I don't know if people in heaven can see us, but if you can, Mary Hayes, thank you. I'll make you proud." Years passed again. Maya became a teacher, just like she said she would. Every morning she stood before a classroom full of children, each one a reflection of the little girl she once was. On the wall behind her desk hung a frame. Inside was a quote that read, "True wealth is what you give, not what you keep." Her students didn't know who said it, but she did. One day, a little girl named Rena came up after class and said, "Miss Maya, I want to be like you when I grow up." Maya smiled. "Then promise me something." "What?" "Promise me that when you have enough, you'll help someone else too." The little girl nodded. "I promise." And just like that, the chain continued. From where I am now, I see it all. The classrooms, the laughter, the lives changed, all from one small decision to give instead of keep. When I first started my secret fund, I thought it was just about helping people. But now I understand. It was never just about money. It was about passing on hope, because hope multiplies. You give it once, and it finds its way into hearts you'll never meet. Maya carried my legacy without ever meeting me. And one day, someone will carry hers. That's how kindness survives time. Now every year, the foundation holds a celebration called the Chain of Hearts. People come from everywhere, students, teachers, families, to share how one act of kindness changed their lives. At the center of the hall stands a simple photo. Me, smiling beside a quote, "Don't wait to be rich to give. Give and you'll realize you already are." And next to it, a plaque added by Maya herself reads, "In memory of Mary Hayes, the woman who proved one heart can change 1,000. When people walk past, they don't just see an old woman's face. They see a story, a reminder that love doesn't die when we do. It keeps teaching, keeps healing, keeps giving." Watch the next story. It's about the little girl who promised Miss Maya something unforgettable. It started with a promise. A little girl looked up at her teacher and said, "I'll help others too." Most people forget promises they make as children, but not her. That one promise grew louder over time, until it reached millions of hearts and somehow found its way back to me. Time is funny. When you're alive, it moves too fast. When you're gone, it stretches like an endless thread of stories. And now, decades after my passing, I'm watching another one begin. Her name is Rena. She doesn't know me. She's never even heard my name. But in her hands, my legacy has taken a form I never imagined. Not in ledgers or bank books, but on glowing screens, shared, liked, and loved by people across the world. Rena grew up in a noisy neighborhood, where dreams were often drowned out by traffic and unpaid bills. Her father drove a taxi. Her mother worked double shifts at a bakery. They didn't have much, but they had a rule. Be kind, no matter what. And that came from Rena's teacher, Miss Maya, years ago. Maya had told her something that stuck like glue. When you can, help someone who can't help themselves. That's how we keep the world going. Rena never forgot that. But as she got older, life started throwing its punches. College was expensive. Her father got sick. Her dreams of becoming a journalist started fading. She worked nights, edited videos, sold clothes online. She barely slept. And one night, as she sat in her tiny rented room, she whispered to herself, "I promised I'd help others, but I can't even help myself." Then something happened. Something small, but powerful. One evening, Rena saw an old woman on a bus, carrying heavy grocery bags. No one offered her a seat. Rena stood up immediately and helped her. The old woman smiled. "Thank you, dear. People don't do this much anymore." Rena just smiled back. "It's okay, ma'am." But as she stepped off the bus, that moment stayed with her. It reminded her of Miss Maya, of that classroom, of that promise. That night, she opened her laptop and started a page called Small Kindness. A simple idea: to share stories of good people doing good things. No filters, no fake smiles, just real moments of kindness. She uploaded her first video. The story of the woman on the bus. No fancy editing, just Rena's voice, softly saying, "Maybe this world isn't so bad after all." Rena's rise at first, nobody watched. A few likes, a few comments. Her friends teased her. Who's gonna care about old people on buses? But she kept posting, day after day. Real stories, real people. A child sharing her lunch, a shopkeeper feeding stray dogs, a bus driver waiting for a late passenger. One day, a video went viral. It was about a janitor who used his small salary to buy books for poor children. The caption read, "You don't have to be rich to make someone's life richer." That line, those words, they weren't even hers. They were mine. The same thing I once told my grandson. The same thing that echoed through Maya. And now, through Rena, the video hit 10 million views. People started sending stories from around the world. She was invited to talk shows, schools, podcasts. Reporters asked, "Where did this idea come from?" Rena smiled. "My teacher once told me, when you can, help someone who can't." I just wanted to keep that promise. One morning, Rena received a message. It was from an older woman named Lily Hayes. The name didn't mean anything to her. But the message read, "Dear Rena, I've been watching your videos. I believe you're connected to a story that started long before you were born. May I meet you?" Rena was curious. She agreed. They met at a quiet garden cafe. Lily was gentle, elegant, with silver hair and soft eyes. She carried a small photo album with her. "I'm sorry if this seems strange," Lily said, "but when I heard your story about your teacher, Miss Maya, I realized I might know who taught her." Rena frowned. "You know Miss Maya's teacher?" Lily smiled. "Yes, she was my grandmother. Her name was Mary Hayes." Rena froze. The name sounded familiar, like something she'd read in a story. Lily opened the album and showed her an old photo. It was Maya, younger, standing next to a foundation banner. "The Mary and Maya Foundation. That's her," Rena whispered. "That's my teacher." Lily nodded, her eyes wet. "She carried my grandmother's legacy. And now, without knowing it, you're carrying hers." Rena's heart pounded. She flipped through the photos. Pictures of classrooms, children, and smiling faces. And then, a quote written under my portrait. "You don't have to be rich to make someone's life richer." Rena gasped. "That's the line from my video." Lily nodded. "I know. It's amazing how kindness travels, isn't it?" They talked for hours. About me. About Maya. About how one act of giving became a chain that refused to break. When they said goodbye, Lily handed her a small pendant. "It was the same locket Maya once wore. Keep it," Lily said. "It belongs to everyone who carries the flame." That night, Rena couldn't sleep. She opened her laptop and started typing a new script. "This isn't just another story," she said. "This one started before I was even born. It's about a woman named Mary Hayes. She wasn't famous. She wasn't rich. But her heart was bigger than all the money in the world." She uploaded the video, calling it "The Grandma Who Changed My Life," without knowing I existed. Within days, it went viral. 30 million views. Thousands of comments from people crying, thanking, reflecting. A woman wrote, "I never met her, but I feel like she raised me." A young man said, "I watched this and decided to help an old man in my neighborhood." And then, one comment stood out. "I was one of the first kids helped by Mary Hayes' foundation. Seeing her legacy alive again makes me believe goodness never dies. From where I am, I see it all. The screens glowing in millions of homes, each showing a story born from love. A story that started in a small kitchen, with an old woman writing her first donation check, thinking she was too small to make a difference. Now, her words are in classrooms, podcasts, hashtags, documentaries. My story, our story, is living in every hand that clicks share. And Rena, that little girl who once made a promise, is now the face of a global kindness movement. Months later, Rena was invited to speak at a global youth summit. People from all over the world attended. The stage was huge, the lights blinding, but her message was simple. "My name is Rena," she said, smiling. "I'm here because of a promise I made when I was 7. But that promise didn't start with me. It started with a woman named Mary Hayes, a grandma who believed love could outlive her." She looked into the crowd. "I used to think stories fade when people die. But now I know the right ones don't. They just find new voices." The crowd stood up, clapping, and on the screen behind her a photo of me appeared, my wrinkled smile shining brighter than ever. Under it, the same words again. "You don't have to be rich to make someone's life richer." And just like that, the loop was complete, from me to Maya to Rena. 3 generations, 1 heartbeat. People think money fades, but kindness multiplies. You plant it once, and it keeps growing long after you're gone. Now, when I watch from wherever I am, I don't see numbers or views. I see people smiling, crying, sharing, helping, and in every single one of them, a piece of me lives on. Rena now runs a global foundation called The Kindness Loop. Every year, she hosts an event called the Hayes Awards, honoring everyday heroes who make a difference. At the end of each ceremony, she tells one story, mine, not because I was rich, but because I taught her, through Maya, through Lily, through time, that you don't need much to change everything. Sometimes, all it takes is one promise. Watch the next story. It's about how one promise can outlive generations. I thought everything ended when I died. The house, the memories, even the love I gave. But I was wrong. What happened after my death proved something no one ever told me. That love doesn't die. It just changes where it lives. You'd think that once you're gone, the world forgets you. Your laughter fades. Your name gets smaller. And the stories about you stop being told. But sitting here, wherever here is, I can see that's not true. Because the stories I left behind didn't fade. They grew. They traveled through time, through people I never met, through hearts that never knew my face but somehow knew my soul. And that's how I learned. You don't need to stay alive to keep living. It's been many years since Rena's big speech. The Kindness Loop Foundation is now everywhere. Schools, hospitals, communities, even online challenges where strangers help strangers just to keep the chain going. And me? I've been watching quietly. Not from a cloud, not with wings or golden light, but from the corners of the memories people share. Every time someone says my quote, every time a hand reaches out in kindness, I feel it, like a heartbeat echoing in eternity. The world changes, but kindness stays. There's a boy in Brazil who started giving free haircuts to homeless people. He said he got the idea from a video Rena posted, one that talked about an old woman who believed in people. There's a teacher in Nepal who plays my story for her students every year, telling them that wealth isn't money, it's love shared. There's even a young man in New York who tattooed the words, "You don't have to be rich to make someone's life richer," on his wrist. He said it reminds him to stay humble. None of them know me. They don't even know the name, Mary Hayes. But it doesn't matter. Because what I gave them wasn't my name. It was a seed. And now, the world is a garden I never planted. But somehow, it grew from my soil. One day, Rena visited a small village school. It was far away, on the edge of a mountain. She went there to speak to children about kindness. As she finished her talk, a little girl walked up shyly and said, "Miss Rena, my grandma told me about you. She said you're part of a story that started with another grandma." Rena smiled softly. "Oh, really? What did she say?" The girl held out a folded paper. On it was written, in neat letters, "True love is what you leave behind when you have nothing left to give." Rena froze. She recognized that handwriting. It was mine, one of my old letters. The ones I used to send with donations decades ago. The little girl said, "My grandma keeps this in her box. She said it came from a woman named Mary Hayes." Rena's eyes filled with tears. She knelt and hugged the child. And at that moment, I felt something shift. The circle was complete. When I was alive, I often worried that I hadn't done enough, that maybe my kindness was too small, too quiet, that people would forget me after I was gone. But now I see, kindness doesn't stay where you leave it. It travels. It moves through people like sunlight through glass. It doesn't ask for credit. It doesn't need applause. It just keeps shining. That's the beauty of it. I thought I'd lost everything when I died. But what I really did was plant everything that mattered. And now, I get to see it bloom in places I never knew existed. Rena continued her work. She grew older, wiser, softer, and one day, she received an award. A lifetime achievement recognition for changing lives through kindness. As she stood on the stage, she held up the same silver locket that had been passed down from Maya, from Lily, from me. She said, "This locket belonged to the woman who started it all. I never met her, but she changed the way I live. So wherever she is, this is for her." The crowd stood up, clapping, and even though no one saw me, I was there, right beside her, smiling for the first time in years, in decades. I felt light, not the kind of light that comes from lamps or cameras, but the kind that fills your soul. Because I realized something simple. I could finally rest. I drifted through the hall one last time, watching faces smiling, hugging, laughing. And then, a familiar voice whispered, "Mama." I turned, and there he was, my husband, younger, glowing, waiting for me. He smiled gently. "Took you long enough?" I laughed through tears. "I had work to finish." He held out his hand. "I know. And you did it beautifully." Behind him stood others, faces from my life. Michael, Sandra, Lily, all watching, proud. I looked down one last time at the world below, at Rena's foundation, at the children laughing, at the people holding banners that said, "Keep the kindness loop alive." And I whispered, "Thank you for remembering me the right way." Then, as the light grew brighter, I felt myself becoming part of something bigger. A warmth, a hum, like every heartbeat on earth had joined in one long, gentle note. And just before everything faded, I heard one last voice, a little child, maybe in some classroom, asking her teacher who was Mary Hayes. And the teacher smiled, saying, "She was someone who believed love could change the world." That's all I ever wanted. Not to be remembered as rich or wise or powerful, but as someone who loved deeply, quietly, and completely. Because love doesn't die. It just changes where it lives. Now it lives in stories, in hearts, in every act of kindness shared online, in every stranger helping another. And maybe that's what heaven really is. Not clouds or wings, but knowing you left the world a little softer than you found it. So if you're listening to this, don't wait for the right time to do good. Don't wait to be rich, or ready, or perfect. Just start. Start where you are, because one small act of love might live forever. Watch the next story. It's proof that one small kindness can outlive us all. I never owned a smartphone. I never even understood the internet. But somehow, decades after I died, my voice started trending. Millions were hearing the story of a poor grandma. And I couldn't believe what they did next. You'd think stories fade with time. People move on, technology changes, and the world forgets the names that once mattered. But one morning, somewhere between time and memory, I saw my face again. Not in a photograph, not in an old album, but on a glowing screen. Someone had uploaded my story, and in just days, it reached millions. It started with a teenager, a boy named Arav. He found one of Rena's old speeches online, where she talked about me, the grandma who changed her life. He edited it into a short video, added subtitles, and called it The Grandma Who Wasn't Poor. He posted it on social media. At first, no one noticed. Then someone shared it. Then 100 more. Then 1 million. Suddenly, the world was watching. People cried, people shared, and some even recorded their own kindness loops in memory of a woman they'd never met. That woman was me. There were comments like, "I showed this to my mom, and we both cried. I miss my grandma. She was just like her." This story made me call my family again. Some people even started the Grandma Challenge, doing one kind act a day for 30 days. No sponsors, no brand, just love, spreading faster than hate ever could. For the first time, I realized the internet isn't all bad. It's just a mirror. And now, it was reflecting kindness. I watched teenagers making food for the homeless, a group of bikers in Canada delivering blankets, a little boy in Japan giving his lunch to a stray dog. Each time they smiled, I felt that warmth again, the one I thought I'd lost forever. It was like my heart had found Wi-Fi. People started saying things like, "If one grandma can change the world, maybe we can too." And I whispered back, "You always could." Then one day I saw her, a girl sitting by a window drawing with crayons. She had my old eyes, curious, soft, hopeful. Her name was Lila, Rena's granddaughter. She was around 10, and her school was celebrating World Kindness Week. Her teacher asked the class, "Does anyone know someone who inspired kindness?" Lila raised her hand proudly. "My great-great-grandma, Mary Hayes." The class laughed softly. Some didn't believe her. But Lila didn't care. She went home, recorded a short video, and said, "This is for my Grandma Mary. You may not know her, but she taught my whole family how to love people, even when they don't love you back." She smiled shyly, clicked upload, and within hours, the world noticed again. The internet fell in love with Lila. They called her the great-granddaughter of kindness. And that night, I cried again. But this time, it was joy. Soon, news outlets started covering it. The grandma who changed the internet. A family's love inspires a global wave of kindness. The Kindness Loop Foundation partnered with schools worldwide, launching programs that taught empathy, gratitude, and sharing. Statues were never built. No museums, no grand memorials. But everywhere I looked, murals, drawings, T-shirts. People had written my words. "You don't need to be rich to make someone's life richer." That sentence had become a global mantra. Even celebrities started using the hashtag, and for once, the trending page wasn't about scandal or gossip. It was about love. Years later, the United Nations announced something unexpected. They declared a new international observance, Global Kindness Day, in honor of Grandma Mary Hayes. Rena, now old and gray, stood on that stage with tears in her eyes. She spoke softly. "My grandma never asked for fame. She just wanted people to care for each other. And today, we're living her dream." The crowd stood in silence, then erupted in applause. I watched from the light above, the same warmth filling me again. I never wanted the world to remember me. I just wanted them to remember love. And they did. It's strange how the things we think are small become the things that change everything. A smile, a thank you, a loaf of bread shared, a letter written in shaky hands. Those moments were my treasures. and now they belong to the world. I used to think being rich meant having money, but I was wrong. The richest people are the ones who give, even when they have nothing left. That's the secret I carried all my life. And now, it's no longer mine alone. If you're watching this, maybe you're lost. Maybe you feel unseen, small or forgotten. I understand, I felt that too. But listen to me. You don't have to do something big to matter. Just love someone, help someone, smile at someone. You never know whose story you might be a part of one day. Because love never dies. It just finds new storytellers. Watch the next story and see how one act of kindness can echo forever. I used to think my story ended when I died, but now I see it was only the beginning, because sometimes love doesn't stop when a heartbeat does. It just changes where it lives. If you had told me years ago that a poor old woman like me would one day touch hearts around the world, I'd have laughed. I wasn't famous. I wasn't powerful. All I had were my stories, a heart that never stopped hoping, and a family that didn't always understand me, until it was too late. But love always finds its way home. Years passed after the kindness movement began. The world didn't suddenly become perfect. People still fought, hurt, forgot. But kindness, it had found its roots. In schools, children learned to share. In hospitals, nurses read my story to lonely patients. In prisons, inmates started their own grandma circles, where they helped each other write letters to the people they'd hurt. No one forced them. They just wanted to do it. And every time I saw someone smile because of a story that once belonged only to me, I felt like I was alive again. Not in body, but in purpose. Rena's final year. Rena grew old too, her hair silvered, her voice softened, but her spirit never changed. She often visited my grave, bringing flowers, not because she was sad, but because she said she still had things to tell me. Sometimes she'd sit there for hours, whispering, "Grandma, your story changed lives. Even now people write to me every day, saying your words saved them." I'd listen quietly, the wind carrying her voice like a lullaby. One day, she came with her granddaughter Lila, all grown up now, holding a letter. She read it aloud. "Dear Great-Grandma Mary, your kindness started before I was born, but I feel it every day. I want to keep telling your stories, because the world still needs them." I smiled from beyond the veil. She didn't know it, but her voice reached me. And that day, I realized my story wasn't just mine anymore. Years later, Rena's family published a book, Letters from Grandma, Stories That Changed the World. It wasn't just my letters. It included letters from strangers, people who had been touched by kindness. Each page carried a life, a memory, a tear. The book spread everywhere. In shelters, in schools, in airports. People read it while waiting, while healing, while hoping. And somehow, they always said the same thing. "I feel like she's talking to me." Maybe I was. I remember sitting by that window once, counting pennies, thinking I had nothing. But now I see. I was rich all along. Rich in the love I gave. Rich in the hearts I touched. Rich in the legacy that outlived my name. The money I left behind. They spent that. But the kindness? It kept growing. Love multiplies in ways no bank ever could. And as I watch from above, I see the world a little softer, a little warmer, a little more like home. That's what I always wanted. A quiet park. Children playing. A wooden bench with a small plaque. It reads, "In memory of Grandma Mary Hayes. She gave without asking back." An old man sits down beside the bench, tired from his day. He sees the plaque, smiles and whispers, "I knew her story." Then he takes out his phone, opens a note, and writes, "Be kind, always. You never know whose story you'll be part of next. He presses post. Somewhere, a young woman sees it, shares it, and the cycle begins again. If you're hearing my voice right now, remember this. You don't need to be rich to change the world. You don't need power to be remembered. You just need a heart that refuses to give up on love. That's all I ever had, and it was enough. Keep the kindness alive. Watch the next story, and carry a little of my love with you.